Poker Smash. A pretty cool game, I like to think I'm a pretty decent player at. And the question does come up as to how does one get better at playing Poker Smash? First thing you'll find out is that most of the high-level players cut their teeth on earlier versions of this sort of game. Tetris Attack on the Super Nintendo was the first and seemingly most popular. Poker Smash's inspiration, no less, which was followed up by Pokemon Puzzle League on the Nintendo 64. And then came Planet Puzzle League on the Nintendo DS, which is what I became addicted to when it was released last June. Point is that they've been playing for years, so it might take a bit of time and practice before you start hitting those 24 chains.
Holy crap!
Oh, anyway, enough rambling and let's just get on with it. First off, let's figure out the movement of the cursor and the cards. As you well know by now, you move the cursor around the screen by using the left analog stick. And once the cursor is on a card, you move the card by using the right stick. But I find it helps to think of it more as pulling and pushing the cards around instead of simply moving them. Because the movement is not instant, there's some slight animation of the cards hopping around, and it's worth keeping in mind when you begin to pull cards underneath other falling cards. Also remember that you can push cards aside by placing the cursor on an empty space and then pushing the right stick into the cards. Bombs are mostly useless in higher levels of play. They are too slow to be of any use when you're facing off against someone else. The 4 seconds it takes to explode could be spent trying to continue your chain. If you're starting a chain, then it has some use, as the destruction of the first card counts as the first part of a chain, but don't bother afterwards. Slow-mo, however, is vital to creating big-ass chains. The cursor can only move so fast, and the same goes for your brain, so it helps to stall by pulling that right trigger. A lot of the moves I'm going to describe in a bit are a bit hard to do at first without the use of slow-mo, so get used to using it. Of course, that's not to say that you should be holding down that right trigger for dear life the entire match, as you only have so much slow-mo in the bar at the bottom right of the screen, and a large part of hitting double-digit chains is the management of that bar. Then there's your left trigger, which raises a bunch of cards from the bottom of the screen. Having more cards on the screen is a good thing, despite the fact that hitting the top of the screen is instant death. The more cards you have, the more you have to create those chains with. Eventually you'll pay to make a habit to continue raising those cards while you're in the middle of a chain, so that you can continue to feed said chain. The rules to making a chain are somewhat simple. Cards that are resting on top of a match must fall to make another match once the cards clear. Perhaps it's easier said than done, as you only have so much time to set up the next match before the cards have cleared. And interfering with the cards in certain ways as they begin to fall will cause the chain to break, which is why in practice you want to keep it simple. 3 of a kinds are what's best for making chains, and you have to actively avoid things like full houses, straights, and flushes. Odds are that those will show up when you least expect them to, destroying more cards than you wanted to and leaving you with nothing left to continue the chain. That being said, there are plenty of moves, for lack of a better term, you can employ to keep your chains going. Here are a few of the ones I can remember off the top of my head to get you started. I suppose the most basic move you can pull is to set up a card on top of a match while setting up 2 others right below. It works well when the match is a horizontal one, but keep in mind that when creating a vertical match that if you have, say, 2 of a kind above or below the 3 of a kind match, they'll all explode and you'll find yourself cursing those full houses. Wait until the match is made to set that one up. This next one has 1 piece on top of the match, with either 2 cards set aside or 1 on each side of the lowest card of the match. Another move you can do after a horizontal match is lay down another one to follow. Pulling cards under other falling cards is something you should start getting used to as well. Creating a vertical match with similar cards above and below creates a gap where you can slide a 3rd one in while the top one is falling. Same goes if you have 2 on the top, slide 1 under. If you happen to create a vertical match where you see 2 cards next to each other while one is above the other and where there will be a space 1 row below the lower, grab the card underneath the middle one of the 3 and pull it towards the match. Once that match explodes, it'll all fall into place. They don't both need to be on the same side either, as it goes for most of these. Catching matches in midair becomes very valuable as well. Having a card on top of a match with 2 cards next to each other somewhere by the well that's created can be made. Just go 1 row below and pull out the card towards the well just before the first card would reach the other 2. That'll create a pseudo floor for the falling one to land on, while the other one will match up before it begins to fall. Don't forget that you can create gaps, sneaking in metaphorical bubbles of air to drop cards more quickly than a bomb would. Just place the cursor at a blank space and keep pushing left or right. It'll push aside the stuff you don't want there, leaving a space for the cards to fall through. You can also use the slow-mo to quickly shift 2 blocks on top of each other for a quick chain. And if you start to get really good with the timing, you can create chains outside of the usual dropping blocks on top of each other. Sliding a piece right into a 3 of a kind just before a previous match explodes will continue the chain, and dropping a piece into a pit just before the other 2 arrive will also count. So now, what to do with all that info I just crammed down your throat? Play the game, I guess. The only way to get better is to take those concepts and put them together, using the slow-mo to set up those chains, and remember above all else to make sure there's cards on top of the matches. Without that, you got nothing to make chains with. At the very least, you should be able to check out some of the top 100 replays and actually understand what's going on instead of being overwhelmed by all the pretty explosions. But we're not done quite yet, because while we've covered enough for the single-player modes, there's still a few things you should know when stepping onto Xbox Live. The way multiplayer works vaguely resembles actual poker, in that the point of the game is to take away points, or chips if you prefer, from your opponent until they have nothing and you have everything. Either that or someone hits the top and loses. Each player starts with 50,000 points, and essentially you have to score points faster than they do. Hence why chains are so important to this game, because it's by far the fastest and most reliable way to accomplish that goal. The way scoring works in this game is as so. Each piece of the chain is worth 100 times the size of that chain. So, not including the value of the matches themselves, a 13 times chain would be worth 200 plus 300 plus 400 plus 500 plus 600 plus 700 plus 800 plus 900 plus 1,300, or 9,000 points. While a 9 flush may be worth 10,000 points, in the heat of battle that 9 flush is near impossible once garbage blocks start falling down, which is what that 13 times chain is able to create plenty of. And that's not even taking into account the stakes, which will multiply all that by whatever number you see at the top of the screen. Speaking of which, the way you send those garbage blocks to your opponent are by making odd numbered chains while you're the dealer. So hitting a 3, 5, or 7, and so on while you're highlighted in orange means everyone you're playing against gets a row of those orange X blocks. But what if you're on the receiving end? Fret not, for you can get rid of those by making a match that touches those blocks, even while it's in the middle of exploding. Just move those cards out of the way and they'll begin to clear. Also remember that you can continue your chain by using those garbage blocks if the chain touches them. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you got something out of spending the last few minutes of your life watching this. See you around.
This 6-string hammer been swinging since 9.